The wind howled through the empty Dublin street like a ghost chasing memories. The rain hit the pavement hard, blurring headlights and silencing footsteps. But through the storm, Ava Brooks heard something, a sound that didn't belong. A soft, frantic tapping, muffled, trapped, like someone screaming through silence. She froze, turned. A black sedan sat idle near the edge of the canal, its windows fogged, engine dead. No one else seemed to notice. Cars passed. People hurried under umbrellas. But Ava, she moved closer. Tap, tap, tap. She peered in. At first, just shadows, then a hand, a man, face pale, eyes fluttering. He was inside, alone and fading. No one else reacted. No one else heard. Without thinking, Ava picked up a stone. Her hands trembled, her heart thundered, and then crash! Glass exploded. Rain poured in. Her arms reached through the broken window, pulling him out just before the car began to slide. She saved his life. But in that single, desperate act, Ava's life would never be the same, because the man she rescued wasn't just anyone. He was Sebastian Hale, reclusive billionaire, missing for 3 days. Presumed dead, and someone out there wasn't happy he survived. They wanted him silent forever, and now they'd come for her too. Ava Brooks wasn't the type of person people noticed, not anymore. At 28, she lived quietly in a modest studio flat above a used bookstore in Dublin's north side, surrounded by second-hand novels and creaky wooden floors. Every morning, she opened the shop at 7 a.m. sharp, brewed a pot of overly strong coffee, and watched the world pass by through the dusty front window. She liked silence. It felt safe, familiar, predictable, but it hadn't always been that way. Years ago, Ava had been a music student at Trinity College, violin prodigy, praised for her sensitivity, her passion. She had a laugh that lit up rooms and fingers that danced through symphonies. But tragedy has a cruel way of rewiring the soul. 2 years ago, her younger sister Eliza disappeared on her way home from school. No clues, no suspects, just gone. And Ava broke. She stopped playing, stopped socializing. The girl who once lived for expression fell into silence. Deep, quiet silence. Her parents moved away, her friends drifted, but Ava stayed, haunted by a case the police stopped chasing, haunted by the idea that she hadn't heard Eliza's call for help, whatever it had been. Since then, Ava wandered the edges of life, watching people rather than joining them. She read mystery novels compulsively, as if trying to crack clues she'd missed in real life. And sometimes, late at night, she walked aimlessly through the city, listening, always listening. It was on one of those night walks that the rain came down hard, soaking her jacket and hair. Most people ran for shelter. Ava didn't. She welcomed the storm, because in chaos, she could pretend her mind was still. Until that tapping sound broke through everything, and Ava, the girl who lost her voice in grief, became the only one to hear a cry no one else did. It had started as just another walk, the kind Ava took when sleep refused to come, when the weight of everything she'd lost pressed down too hard to bear. That night, the city seemed quieter than usual, as if holding its breath. The streetlights flickered. The river flowed dark and swollen with rain. She wore a hooded coat, soaked at the sleeves, her boots splashing through shallow puddles. She should have turned back, but something about that night felt off. That's when she heard it. Tap, tap, tap. So faint, she thought at first it was her imagination, the kind of false sound your brain makes when you want to hear something meaningful in the emptiness. But no, it came again, more urgent. Tap, tap, tap. She turned toward the sound. A sleek, black car was parked awkwardly near the edge of the canal, hazard lights dim, barely pulsing. No movement inside, but Ava stepped closer, heart pounding. It was then that she saw the condensation on the inside of the window, and a smear, a handprint. Her breath caught, Someone was inside. She ran to the door and pulled the handle, locked. She pounded on the window. No response, only that faint tapping, weakening. "Hey, can you hear me?" Nothing. His head was slumped against the glass, his skin too pale, like the color had drained from his body. Ava looked around. No one. She screamed for help. Still, no one. Then something inside her snapped. The same ache that haunted her for 2 years, the guilt of not hearing Eliza when she needed her most, turned into fire. Ava grabbed a brick from the sidewalk and, without hesitating, smashed it through the rear window. The alarm shrieked. Glass scattered like ice. Rain and wind rushed in. She reached in, yanked the lock and pulled the door open with a grunt. The man inside was unconscious, barely breathing. She gripped his shoulders and dragged him out just as the car began to slide, slow at first, then faster, toward the canal's edge. Within seconds, the vehicle slipped into the murky water. If she'd waited even a minute longer, he would have drowned. Paramedics arrived minutes later, but by then, Ava was soaked to the bone, kneeling beside him, her hands cut and trembling. The police asked questions, but she barely heard them. It wasn't until the next morning, when the news exploded across every channel and headline, that she learned his name, Sebastian Hale, missing for 72 hours, CEO of Hale Tech, a billionaire known for being brilliant, reclusive, and allegedly at the center of a scandal involving a secret tech deal with national security implications. And Ava? Now tied to him, publicly, irrevocably. Someone had tried to erase him, and now she had brought him back, and she'd just made herself the next target. The morning after the rescue, Ava woke up to chaos. Reporters crowded in front of the bookstore. Paparazzi camped outside her building. Her name, once unknown, now trended online. Mysterious woman saves missing billionaire. But the attention wasn't admiration. It was surveillance, invasive, ruthless. Strangers accused her of staging the rescue for fame. Others speculated she was his mistress. Some even claimed she'd kidnapped him. Her phone buzzed non-stop. Messages from people she hadn't heard from in years. Conspiracy theorists, trolls, even death threats. Ava had wanted silence. Now she was drowning in noise. Then came the knock. 2 men in black suits claiming to be from internal security. They asked questions, too many, about the night of the rescue, about what she saw, about whether Sebastian said anything. But he hadn't. He was still unconscious, in critical condition at a private hospital under heavy guard. So why did they seem nervous? Why did they warn her not to speak to anyone? That night, someone broke into her apartment. They didn't steal anything. They just went through her things, quietly, as if looking for something she didn't even know she had. The police brushed it off as a random burglary, but Ava wasn't convinced. A week later, she got the call. A private nurse from the hospital, whispers only. Sebastian had woken up, and he'd asked for Ava by name. Against her better judgment, she went. He looked fragile in the hospital bed, hooked to machines, eyes sunken. But as soon as she walked in, his expression changed. Not just recognition, but relief. "You heard me," he rasped. "No one else did." Over the next few days, Sebastian revealed fragments of what happened. He'd been working on a classified tech project, something to do with surveillance, artificial intelligence, and a secret deal with a foreign agency. He had discovered something and refused to sign off. That's when they tried to eliminate him. He didn't know who they were exactly, just that someone powerful had made him disappear. And Ava, she'd ruined their plan. Then things escalated. The bookstore was set on fire. Her bank account was frozen. Ava was summoned for questioning by federal agents. She was now a person of interest in a case involving corporate espionage and national security. Her quiet life was gone, but she refused to run. Something awakened in Ava, a fire long buried. For 2 years, she'd lived in guilt and numbness. But now, for the first time, she had purpose. She had a reason to fight. With Sebastian's help, now recovering in secret at a secure safe house, she began piecing together the puzzle. Phone records, emails, files he'd hidden in encrypted servers. They weren't just up against a company, they were up against a system, and it didn't like to be exposed. Every step brought them closer to the truth and deeper into danger. Ava found herself chased through alleys, her name smeared in the media, followed by unmarked cars, her home gone, her job destroyed. But she wouldn't back down. Because now it wasn't just about Sebastian, it was about Eliza. She started to suspect the same forces that buried Sebastian's truth may have had a hand in what happened to her sister. 2 disappearances, 2 silences. Ava was no longer afraid of the noise. She would shatter it, even if it killed her. Ava stood in the heart of the storm. Not a metaphorical one this time, but a literal downpour. Lightning cracking across the Dublin sky as she waited on the rooftop of a decommissioned data center just outside the city. Her breath came in cold bursts. Her fingers clenched tightly around the flash drive Sebastian had risked everything to recover. Inside it, proof, documents, emails, black-budget contracts linking a multinational tech firm, a rogue security agency, and political players, all part of a covert surveillance system disguised as national defense. It would be enough to bring down names she'd seen on front-page headlines her whole life, and it explained everything: why Sebastian had been silenced, why her sister Eliza might have been caught in the web. But now, the drop point, the only chance to upload the files to a secure public whistleblower network, had been compromised. She'd been set up. From the corner of her eye, she saw movement. Black vans, doors opening, armed men emerging, voices in earpieces. Laser sights cutting through the rain. She ran, down concrete stairs, through dark corridors. Bullets ricocheted off metal railings. Her lungs burned. Her mind raced. This wasn't a movie. There was no cavalry coming, only her. She reached the server room, slammed the door behind her and jammed the lock. Her hands shook as she connected the drive to the terminal. Uploading. 1%, 12%, 34%. The door exploded open behind her. She dove, knocking over metal cabinets, using the sparks and smoke as cover. Her coat ripped. Blood smeared her palm as she crawled. 52%, 73%. They fired. She screamed, not in fear, but rage, a scream that had lived in her chest for 2 years. For Eliza, for everything they tried to bury. 84%, 97%. One of the men reached for the drive, but Sebastian appeared behind him, still weak, barely upright, but holding a steel rod. One hit, then another, enough to delay the attacker. 100%. The files uploaded, the truth released. Sirens wailed in the distance, the real ones. Someone had tipped off the press. The world was about to see what had been hidden. Ava collapsed in the corner, soaked, shaking, and sobbing, but alive. And finally, heard. The days that followed felt like a blur to Ava. Her life had been turned upside down, the echoes of her actions rippling across every corner of the world. The files, now in the hands of journalists and international watchdogs, spread across the globe like wildfire. The powerful figures named within them were exposed. The corruption, the abuse of power, the manipulations of those who had hidden in the shadows for too long. Sebastian Hale's name no longer appeared in the news with headlines about his disappearance or the mystery of his survival. Now, people spoke of him as a whistleblower, a reluctant hero who had taken down a massive conspiracy. But Ava knew the truth. He hadn't done it alone. She had been the one who'd listened when no one else could, the one who risked everything for someone who, at first, had seemed like just another rich, powerful man. And she had become something else. The woman who once shrank from the world, who drowned herself in books and silence, had found her voice. Not only did she speak for herself now, but she had spoken for the silenced, for the nameless victims, the ones buried beneath layers of corruption and deceit, the ones who, like her sister Eliza, had been taken without explanation, their stories left unfinished. In the months that followed, Ava's life began to shift again. She took up a new cause, not as a victim, but as an advocate. She joined a network of whistleblowers, helping other voices that had been smothered by powerful elites. She didn't expect recognition. It wasn't about fame. It was about justice, real, painful, necessary justice. Her relationship with Sebastian, though, remained complex. He had offered her everything: resources, safety, a life that was far beyond her own quiet bookstore. But Ava wasn't sure that was what she wanted anymore. Sebastian, despite all his wealth and influence, still had his own battles, and he was still recovering from the trauma of his near-death experience, the betrayals, and the men he had once trusted. They spoke often. But Ava knew she couldn't be a part of his world, not without losing the very essence of what had brought her strength. The woman who broke through the glass to save him had to remain free, free from the shackles of expectation, free from the guilt that had once consumed her. And so she returned to her bookstore, the same old place, the same creaky floors. But now, Ava wasn't just watching the world go by, she was part of it. One evening, as the sun set over the city, she stood by the window of the bookstore, watching the world she had so carefully avoided for so long. The sound of traffic, the bustle of life outside, it no longer scared her. It was her world now, and she no longer had to hide from it. Ava felt the hum of the city around her, but she was different now, stronger, more alive, more attuned to the stories that had been silenced for too long. She took a deep breath. For the first time in a long while, she felt at peace. And as the rain began to fall again, Ava smiled softly to herself. The storm didn't scare her anymore. She had learned to embrace it, because storms, after all, can clear the skies. What about you? Have you ever found yourself at a crossroads, unsure of which way to turn? Have you ever felt the weight of silence pressing in, the fear of doing the wrong thing, of standing up when the world is telling you to stay down? Ava Brooks didn't start as a hero. She was just a woman who had lost her voice, her sister, and her purpose. But through courage, resilience, and the will to fight for the truth, she became something more. Sometimes the hardest thing in the world is to break the silence. But when you do, everything changes. Now it's your turn. Maybe you've felt powerless before. Maybe you've been silenced by fear or doubt. But if Ava taught us anything, it's that even the smallest action can shatter walls that seem impossible to break. So, what will you do next? Share your story. What's something you've wanted to say but couldn't? What's a change you've been afraid to make but know you need to? Let's keep the conversation going. Together, we can break the silence. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of transformation, courage, and the fight for justice. Comment below. What's one thing you'd do if you knew the world was listening? Let's start a conversation. Stay strong, stay heard.